Hello again, welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. It's Paul Schrimpf here with a special guest with us this week. It's Christina Herrick. She's senior editor of American Fruit Grower and Western Fruit Grower. I'd say both. There's two publications, one specifically for the West Coast. So welcome, Christina. Thanks for coming. So one of the reasons I wanted to ask you in, because we're talking about technology, and we're actually launching, Meister's launching of an event called Growing Innovations. It's going to be in Vegas, first week of November. We're getting ready for that. So I know there's a lot of interesting innovations happening especially in a specialty crop side. So and, being a row crop group in general, we tend to very much focus on corn and soybeans and all that, the mother's milk of our base audience. But I know technology is really starting to kind of take hold in the specialty crop area. I mean, what sorts of problems at this point are growers really looking to solve when it comes to technology solutions? What are they looking for technology to help with?
Well, I think one of the basics is harvest assist. That's pretty obvious. We've on our magazine we've done a lot of stories about labor availability, and it's changing, and there's constantly a need. But one interesting thing is I was telling Dave Eddy, the editor of American Fruit Grower and Western Fruit Grower, I was telling him I was going to be on here, and he said, a lot of growers are telling him that yield estimation is really important, especially for large operations. Just being able to have a marketer know how many apples are coming of a specific variety is really instrumental, and it probably would give that potential grower a big leg up on their competition.
Interesting. So it's more about downstream. It's what the folks are expecting as the crops are coming in.
Yeah, I saw a demo of it when I was actually in New Zealand a little bit ago, and yeah, they have a sensor. It actually attaches to the back of a tractor, just a general tractor. It's got some other software and some interface with it, but it just goes down the row and it's able to sense the crop, and then it kind of, I think it figures it by an average. It takes kind of the top and bottom and then kind of comes up with an average of what is on the tree. And growers are pretty good just generally with knowing crop and being able to estimate how many buds per tree and things as they go along. But this, I think, as stuff progresses, it's a quicker, faster read. It would probably help them quite a bit.
Interesting. So we've heard actually a lot more. I think there's been a lot more publicity about robotics,
yeah.
And in terms of harvesting and other things that can automate. I mean, but we've also seen that be really that's the future, and it always will be. Seems like the feeling of it, because it never really gets to fruition. Because they've been working on the apples and apple picking and things for a number of years, haven't they?
Oh yeah, Dave and I kind of were talking about the Washington Tree Fruit Research Association, and they were actually founded just about 50 years ago to actually get a robotic harvest. So, I think we're getting there. We're getting there a lot closer. There's two robotic harvesters that are working in Washington, and both have some funds from the Tree Fruit Research Association. And, they're getting there, but it's still one of those things where we're not exactly sure when it's going to be mass produced, how it's going to take shape. And I think some of that too has to do with these companies that are developing the technology. They don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So there's been a little bit of I don't know if mystery is the right word, but there's been some data where they haven't really been able to say it picks at this speed, it does this, just because I think they're still developing the technology, and they're working on making the processing faster and all the other parts that go along with a robot actually being able to see an apple on a tree and pick it and take it.
Interesting. One of the things I think I heard you mentioning was, or overheard in a conversation, was talking about growers. I hope it was you. I don't know. I think it was. But it was talking about the growers and the perception of robotics and automation replacing growers versus supplementing growers, and the importance of the continuing importance of having that human interaction, that human influence on what's happening in the field.
Yeah, well, I think that's the one interesting thing about all of this technology that they're delivering. It's not going to be something that's just in a clinical setting where the lighting's perfect and everything's the same. There's a lot of variation. Trees don't necessarily, not just trees, all the types of crops that are grown, nothing's perfect, nothing's straight. There's a lot of visual barriers to a lot of the things that they're trying to see and then work on. Yeah, I don't ever foresee, robots just completely replacing the human element. Maybe many, many, many years down the road by the time I'm no longer on this earth. But, I think the human element is definitely going to be a part of this. They're going to need people to actually go out and service the equipment and everything else along with it, calibrate it.
Sure. Yeah, there's always that. I mean, we've had yield monitors in row crops for 20, 25 years, and the adoption's still very low in terms of actually optimizing it. We've estimated maybe 15 to 20% of growers are really using the yield monitor in a way they can they can get repeatable data every year, and it's for a different reason that they're doing it, but they're really more agronomic than it is, maybe logistical on the back end, on the processor side, as you were saying. But it just takes a lot of work, and in calibration, all that stuff it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
No, and I would think too, probably a big barrier to all of this is going to be cost. None of this is going to be cheap. It's going to be something that, a return on investment for a small grower is probably going to take a long time, whereas, a larger grower might be able to, purchase a robotic harvester, purchase a yield estimator, and it pay off quicker. It's interesting. I've sat through so many different talks on robotics, getting your apple tree canopy ready for robotics. It seems like there aren't really any straight answers on what works best. I think a lot of these companies are starting to understand what doesn't work, but there's nothing uniform, and I think that even makes it really hard then for implementation. But yeah, I think cost is probably going to be one of the biggest barriers to entry for a lot of this equipment.
Sure.
But we've sat in, you've sat in stuff. The technology to develop this is getting cheaper year in and year out, so that does help everything move along. But there's still a large price tag on a lot of this.
Absolutely. Well, just one more thing. That's how I got you here. Any other technologies along the lines of sensors or things that these folks are using that you're seeing that's of interest?
Yeah, there's a lot of irrigation sensors that are happening. Drones, I think, are becoming more popular just for use in visuals, and there's a lot of that infrared and things like that where they're able to sense kind of drought and things like that within the orchards and within the vineyards. Those are kind of the big ones. I know that there's also in Florida, they're working on a strawberry harvester as well. A lot of this is really difficult because, we as consumers, produce consumers, expect to have immaculate fruit wherever we get our fruit. We expect it to be perfect. And that's really difficult to harvest robotically and do things like that. So, I think that's part of the challenge to all of this, where some of this other automation, whether it's yield estimation and things like that, may be easier to implement and to have either, robotic or automate in some way, as opposed to actually the harvest part of it, because, those little hands trying to grab a blueberry would be pretty difficult.
Absolutely. Interesting stuff. Well, it's really been great. Hopefully, our friends here get a little sense for what's happening in the technology side and fruit, and thanks for coming, Christina. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this edition of CropLife Retail Week. We'll be back next week.